The Galactic Assassination Guild had never failed a contract in over 3,000 years. Their elite killers were legends whispered about in the darkest corners of civilized space. Each member was chosen from the deadliest species across known worlds, enhanced with cybernetics and trained in arts of death that most beings couldn't even comprehend. Zektar the Void Walker could phase through solid matter at will. His obsidian skin absorbed light itself, making him nearly invisible in shadows. The Krillian had eliminated 17 planetary leaders without ever being detected. His forearms moved with surgical precision, each hand capable of wielding a different weapon simultaneously. Nisa Bloodfang possessed reflexes 50 times faster than baseline humanoid species. The reptilian Sauroch could perceive time differently, watching laser bolts crawl through air like falling rain. Her scales deflected most energy weapons, and her razor-sharp claws could slice through reinforced steel like paper. Then there was Gorvak the Mind Render, a telepathic Zenthari whose mental abilities could crush consciousness from across star systems. His pale blue skin rippled with bioelectric energy, and his enlarged cranium housed a brain that processed thoughts at quantum speeds. He could read intentions before victims even formed them. The three had been sent to a backwater system called Sol to eliminate what their contract described as a dangerous theft. Intelligence reports indicated that a human named Marcus Chen had stolen classified military technology from the hegemony's most secure facility. The theft was so significant that it threatened the balance of power across multiple sectors. What puzzled the assassins was why the hegemony considered this human such a threat. Humans were barely recognized as a spacefaring species. They had only achieved faster-than-light travel 50 years ago and possessed primitive weapons compared to galactic standards. Their biology seemed unremarkable compared to the enhanced warriors and ancient species that dominated known space. The mission briefing had been unusually sparse. Marcus Chen was described as a former mercenary who had somehow infiltrated the hegemony's Project Starfall facility on Kepler 442b. He had escaped with prototype technology that could revolutionize warfare. The hegemony wanted him dead, and the technology recovered at any cost. Zektar studied the target's profile as their stealth ship approached Earth's solar system. Marcus Chen appeared to be an ordinary human male, approximately 35 standard years old. His military record showed competent but unremarkable service in various human conflicts. There was nothing in his background that suggested he posed a serious threat to beings of their caliber. The human homeworld itself seemed laughably vulnerable. Earth's defensive systems were centuries behind galactic standards. Their ships were slow, their weapons crude, and their detection systems primitive. The planet would have fallen to any serious galactic power within hours. Nisa sharpened her claws with anticipation. After hunting the galaxy's most dangerous beings, facing a mere human felt almost insulting. Her enhanced senses could already imagine the fear radiating from their target when he realized death had found him. Gorvak probed the local space around Earth with his telepathic abilities. He sensed the chaotic, undisciplined thoughts of billions of humans below. Their minds were unshielded, their emotions raw and uncontrolled. It would be trivial to locate one specific individual among such mental noise. The assassin's ship slipped past Earth's orbital defenses undetected. Human technology couldn't even register their advanced cloaking systems. They identified Marcus Chen's location within hours of arrival. He was hiding in the ruins of an abandoned city on what humans called the North American continent. The irony wasn't lost on them. The human had stolen technology that could threaten galactic civilization, yet he was hiding in primitive ruins like some scavenger. Whatever he had taken from Project Starfall, he clearly didn't understand its true significance. Zektar phased through the ship's hull and descended toward Earth's surface like a shadow given form. His approach was silent and invisible, a technique that had never failed him before. The abandoned city below showed signs of some past human conflict, with shattered buildings and overgrown streets, creating perfect hunting grounds. Nisa followed a different vector, her enhanced speed allowing her to reach the surface in minutes rather than hours. Her senses immediately cataloged thousands of scents, sounds, and electromagnetic signatures. She could smell the human's fear already, even from kilometers away. The scent of adrenaline and desperation was unmistakable. Gorvak remained aboard their ship, extending his consciousness down toward the planet's surface. His telepathic reach could cover the entire continent if necessary. Finding one unshielded human mind would be child's play. He would coordinate the hunt and ensure their target had no escape. The abandoned city stretched for dozens of kilometers, a testament to some long-forgotten human war. Rusted vehicles littered cracked streets, while skeletal buildings reached toward polluted skies. It was the perfect place for someone to hide, and the perfect place for skilled hunters to corner their prey. Zektar moved through the ruins like flowing darkness. His form passed through concrete walls and steel barriers as if they were mere suggestions. The human thermal signature showed clearly on his enhanced vision, a bright spot of body heat in the cool night air. Marcus Chen was holed up in what appeared to be an old military bunker several levels underground. The bunker's entrance was well concealed and protected by crude human security systems. Motion detectors and pressure plates surrounded the hidden doorway, but such primitive devices meant nothing to beings of their abilities. Zektar could phase directly through the barriers while Nissa could move too quickly for the sensors to register her presence. What struck Zektar as odd was the bunker's construction. Human engineering was supposedly inferior to galactic standards, yet this facility showed signs of unusual sophistication. The walls were lined with materials he didn't immediately recognize, and the power signatures suggested technology beyond normal human capabilities. Nisa reached the bunker's perimeter and immediately noticed something that made her pause. The scents around the facility were wrong. Instead of the simple human odors she expected, there were traces of exotic metals and energy signatures that didn't match her intelligence briefings. The stolen technology was definitely here, but it had been modified somehow. Gorvak focused his telepathic probe on the bunker's location and immediately encountered something unexpected. The human's mind wasn't unshielded as anticipated. Instead, Marcus Chen's thoughts were protected by some kind of mental barrier that deflected casual telepathic contact. It wasn't sophisticated by galactic standards, but it was far beyond what humans should have possessed. The three assassins paused in their approach, suddenly uncertain. Their target was proving more prepared than expected. The abandoned city around them felt different now, less like a refuge and more like a carefully chosen battleground. Marcus Chen might be human, but he clearly understood more about galactic technology than their briefings had suggested. Zektar signaled his companions through their encrypted communication link. The mission parameters were unchanged, but they would need to exercise greater caution than initially planned. Humans might be primitive, but even primitive beings could be dangerous when cornered and desperate. The night air carried strange electromagnetic pulses that interfered with their enhanced senses. The ruins around them seemed to shift and change in their peripheral vision, creating false movement signatures that kept them constantly alert. Whatever technology Marcus Chen had stolen, he was using it to level the playing field in ways none of them had anticipated. As they closed in on their target's position, each assassin felt the first stirrings of something they rarely experienced during a hunt. Not fear exactly, but a growing awareness that this mission might not proceed according to their usual devastating efficiency. The human had chosen his ground well and prepared defenses that suggested intelligence far beyond what they had been told to expect. The real hunt was about to begin, And for the first time in centuries, the galaxy's most feared killers weren't entirely certain of the outcome. Marcus Chen sat in the deepest level of the abandoned bunker, surrounded by technology that shouldn't have existed on Earth for another 1,000 years. The stolen hegemony prototype hummed quietly on the workbench before him, its crystalline matrix pulsing with contained energy. But Marcus hadn't stolen the device. He had built it himself. The truth was far more complex than the Assassination Guild realized. Marcus Chen wasn't a thief at all. He was a survivor of humanity's first contact with galactic civilization, an event that had been carefully hidden from the general population. 3 years ago, a hegemony research vessel had crash-landed in the Australian outback during a routine survey mission. The crash site had been secured by human military forces before the hegemony could mount a recovery operation. Inside the wreckage, Marcus and his special operations team had discovered technology beyond their wildest imagination. More importantly, they had found something the hegemony didn't want anyone to know about their supposedly advanced civilization. The crashed ship's computer core contained detailed records of the hegemony's expansion across the galaxy. What those records revealed was disturbing. The hegemony didn't conquer worlds through military might alone. They achieved dominance by suppressing the technological development of emerging species, keeping them dependent and controllable. Every species in galactic civilization had reached a certain level of development before mysteriously stagnating. The official explanation was that they had achieved optimal technological efficiency. The reality was that the hegemony actively prevented further advancement through sabotage, assassination, and careful manipulation of scientific research. Humans were supposed to have been discovered and controlled decades ago, but Earth's location in a relatively isolated spiral arm had delayed first contact. When the survey ship crashed, the hegemony realized that humanity had continued advancing at a dangerous rate. Without their interference, human innovation was accelerating beyond their predictions. Marcus had spent 3 years studying the alien technology and learning the truth about galactic politics. What he discovered was that humans possessed something most other species had lost through millennia of hegemony control. They retained the ability to innovate and adapt at a pace that terrified the established order. The device on his workbench wasn't stolen hegemony technology. It was human engineering reverse-engineered from alien principles and improved beyond the original design. The crystalline matrix could process quantum calculations at rates that exceeded even hegemony supercomputers. But more importantly, it could do something that should have been impossible. The device could predict probability cascades across multiple dimensional frameworks. In simpler terms, it could calculate the likely outcomes of complex scenarios before they occurred. Marcus had used it to anticipate the Assassination Guild's arrival and prepare accordingly. The bunker around him wasn't just a hiding place. It was a carefully designed trap that exploited the weaknesses of his pursuers. The strange materials lining the walls weren't human construction. They were salvaged from the crashed hegemony ship and repurposed into something the aliens had never imagined. The electromagnetic pulses interfering with the assassin's senses were generated by modified human radio equipment synchronized with the alien technology. The result was a field that disrupted enhanced biological systems without affecting baseline human physiology. Marcus had turned the aliens' technological superiority against them. Above him, Zektar attempted to phase through the bunker's outer walls and encountered his first real surprise. The modified alien materials created a quantum interference field that made phasing extremely difficult and painful. His obsidian skin, which normally absorbed all forms of energy, began to glow with uncomfortable heat as the field interacted with his enhanced biology. The Krillian assassin found himself forced to use conventional entry methods for the first time in decades. The bunker's security systems, while primitive by galactic standards, were integrated with quantum prediction algorithms that anticipated his movements. Every corridor he entered led to new obstacles perfectly positioned to counter his abilities. Nisa experienced similar difficulties as she attempted to use her enhanced speed to penetrate the facility's defenses. The quantum interference field affected her temporal perception, making everything around her seem to move at unpredictable rates. Her razor-sharp claws, which could normally cut through any material, sparked and dulled against walls that seemed to shift their molecular structure in response to her attacks. Gorvak's telepathic abilities proved equally ineffective against the bunker's defenses. The quantum field created mental static that made precise telepathic targeting impossible. When he attempted to force his way through Marcus's mental barriers, he encountered something that made him recoil in shock. The human's mind wasn't protected by technology alone. Marcus had somehow learned to think in quantum probability states, making his thoughts exist in multiple potential realities simultaneously. Reading such a mind was like trying to grasp smoke with bare hands. Every thought led to dozens of equally valid possibilities. What none of the assassins realized was that Marcus could perceive their presence and movements through the quantum prediction device. He watched their frustration and confusion with growing confidence. The galaxy's most feared killers were discovering that human ingenuity could level any playing field. The bunker's lower levels contained more than just defensive systems. Marcus had used the 3 years since the crash to build manufacturing equipment capable of producing technology that surpassed galactic standards. The quantum processor was just the beginning of what human innovation could achieve without artificial limitations. Hidden throughout the facility were weapons and devices that the hegemony would have considered impossible. Human engineers had taken alien concepts and improved them through approaches that no other species had ever considered. The result was technology that was simultaneously primitive and revolutionary. Marcus activated a communication system that reached beyond Earth's solar system. His message was broadcast on quantum frequencies that the hegemony monitored constantly. He wanted them to know that their secret was exposed and that humanity would not be controlled like the other species. The transmission contained detailed technical specifications for the quantum prediction device, along with the historical records from the crashed ship. Within hours, the information would reach human colonies throughout local space. The hegemony's careful control over technological development was about to face its greatest challenge. Above ground, the 3 assassins realized that their mission had fundamentally changed. They weren't hunting a simple thief anymore. They were facing a representative of a species that refused to accept limitations imposed by others. The human had turned their own advanced abilities into disadvantages through careful preparation and innovative thinking. Zektar's phasing abilities were nearly useless in the quantum interference field. Nisa's enhanced speed was countered by temporal distortions that she couldn't predict or adapt to quickly enough. Gorvak's telepathic powers were blocked by mental defenses that operated on principles he didn't understand. For the first time in their careers, the galaxy's elite killers found themselves outmaneuvered by supposedly primitive prey. The human hadn't simply stolen their technology. He had improved it and used it to create something entirely new. The implications were staggering for both the Assassination Guild and the hegemony that employed them. Marcus waited in the bunker's deepest chamber, surrounded by technology that represented humanity's true potential. The assassins would eventually find him, but the confrontation would occur on his terms, rather than theirs. He had spent 3 years preparing for this moment, and every calculation suggested that the outcome would surprise everyone involved. The quantum prediction device showed multiple probability streams converging on a single point. The next few hours would determine whether humanity remained hidden and controlled or emerged as a new force in galactic civilization. Marcus Chen, former mercenary and accidental revolutionary, stood ready to represent his entire species in a battle that would reshape the galaxy. The final confrontation took place in a chamber that defied everything the assassins thought they knew about human capabilities. The room's walls displayed star charts showing the true extent of galactic civilization, along with detailed analysis of the hegemony's suppression techniques used on dozens of species. Marcus Chen stood calmly in the center, his hand resting on a device that pulsed with contained energy. Zektar entered first, his form flickering between solid and ethereal as the quantum field interfered with his phasing abilities. The legendary assassin who had killed planetary leaders without ever being detected found himself struggling to maintain basic coherence. His obsidian skin crackled with electromagnetic discharge as the modified alien technology turned his own enhancements against him. Nisa arrived seconds later, her movements jerky and unpredictable as the temporal distortions affected her enhanced reflexes. The Sarok warrior who could dodge laser fire found herself unable to judge distances or timing accurately. Her razor claws sparked against surfaces that seemed to shift between molecular states faster than she could process. Gorvak manifested his telepathic presence in the chamber, but his mental probe immediately encountered the quantum static that made precise targeting impossible. The Zenthari who could crush minds across star systems discovered that human consciousness, when protected by quantum probability fields, became effectively untouchable through conventional telepathic methods. Marcus looked at the three beings who represented the pinnacle of galactic assassination arts and felt a mixture of respect and pity. They were magnificent killers operating according to rules that had been established over millennia of hegemony control. But they had never faced a species that refused to accept those rules as absolute. The quantum prediction device showed him the immediate future probability streams. In 93% of potential outcomes, the assassins would attempt to complete their mission through direct confrontation. In 7%, they would attempt to retreat and request additional support. Marcus had prepared for both scenarios. He activated the chamber's primary defensive system, and the assassins found themselves trapped within a quantum containment field that operated on principles none of them understood. The field didn't just block their movements. It created multiple overlapping reality states that made conventional action impossible. Zektar attempted to phase through the containment barrier and discovered that his quantum state existed in all possible positions simultaneously. He was everywhere and nowhere at once, unable to collapse his probability wave into a single location. The sensation was profoundly disorienting for a being accustomed to precise control over his molecular structure. Nisa tried to use her enhanced speed to find weaknesses in the containment system, but her accelerated time perception showed her every possible movement she might make without allowing her to choose any specific action. She existed in a state of infinite potential motion that prevented actual movement. Gorvak focused his telepathic abilities on the quantum field itself, attempting to manipulate the technology through direct mental contact. Instead, he found his consciousness expanded across multiple probability states. He could perceive thousands of potential thoughts simultaneously, but couldn't focus on any single mental pathway. Marcus watched their struggles with professional appreciation. The quantum containment system was his greatest innovation, combining human theoretical physics with alien engineering principles to create something that transcended both. The assassins weren't being harmed, but they were experiencing existence in a way that their enhanced biology couldn't process effectively. He began to explain the situation while the three killers struggled against constraints they couldn't understand. The truth about galactic civilization and the hegemony's control mechanisms. The systematic suppression of technological advancement among member species. The way humanity had escaped that control through isolation and continued innovation. The quantum prediction device had shown him that direct confrontation would only delay the inevitable. The hegemony would send more assassins, followed by military forces, and eventually would resort to orbital bombardment if necessary. But there was another option that offered hope for both humanity and the trapped killers. Marcus revealed his true plan. He hadn't stolen hegemony technology to gain an advantage for humanity alone. He had developed quantum enhancement techniques that could free any species from the artificial limitations imposed by their controllers. The three assassins were about to become test subjects for a process that could revolutionize galactic civilization. The quantum field began to interact with their enhanced biology in ways that none of them expected. Instead of suppressing their abilities, it started to amplify and refine them beyond anything the hegemony's enhancement procedures had achieved. Zektar's phasing abilities expanded to allow movement between dimensional layers that he hadn't known existed. Nissa's temporal perception accelerated to levels that let her perceive quantum fluctuations in real time. She could see the probability streams that governed reality itself, watching as potential futures crystallized into actual events. Her enhanced reflexes evolved to respond to threats before they fully materialized. Gorvak's telepathic range exploded outward to encompass the entire solar system and beyond. He could sense the thoughts of every intelligent being within light years, but more importantly, he could perceive the artificial neural limitations that had been secretly installed in his consciousness during his original enhancement procedures. The three assassins realized that their legendary abilities had been carefully constrained by the same beings who had hired them. The hegemony had enhanced them just enough to make them effective weapons while ensuring they could never become threats to the established order. Marcus's quantum field was removing those limitations for the first time in their lives. Zektar felt his consciousness expand across multiple dimensions simultaneously. He could perceive realities where the hegemony had never existed, where species developed freely without artificial constraints. His obsidian skin began to emit patterns of light that corresponded to quantum probability calculations operating in real time. Nissa experienced time in ways that transcended linear causation. She could see how every action created ripple effects across space and time, how the hegemony's control mechanisms had shaped the development of entire civilizations. Her enhanced reflexes evolved to respond to threats and opportunities that existed across multiple timelines. Gorvak's telepathic abilities transformed into something approaching true quantum consciousness. He could perceive the thoughts and motivations of beings across the galaxy, understanding for the first time how the hegemony's mental conditioning had affected every species under their control, including his own people. The three assassins looked at Marcus Chen with new understanding. He wasn't their target anymore. He was the key to freeing not just humanity, but every species that had been suppressed and controlled by the Galactic Order. The stolen technology wasn't a weapon to be recovered. It was liberation itself. Marcus deactivated the containment field and stepped back as the enhanced assassins tested their new capabilities. The quantum prediction device showed probability streams that hadn't existed minutes before. The future was becoming fluid in ways that the hegemony couldn't anticipate or control. Zektar phased through dimensions that let him bypass the laws of physics entirely. He could appear anywhere in the galaxy instantaneously, carrying information and technology to species that had forgotten their potential for growth. Nissa moved through time streams that allowed her to coordinate actions across multiple timelines, creating cascading effects that would undermine hegemony control systems throughout known space. Gorvak reached out with his transformed telepathic abilities and began waking up minds across the galaxy. Every enhanced individual, every suppressed scientist, every controlled leader suddenly found their artificial limitations dissolving as quantum enhancement spread like a virus through galactic civilization. The three assassins who had come to kill a human thief found themselves transformed into agents of galactic revolution. Marcus Chen had done more than steal technology or escape pursuit. He had created the conditions for humanity and every other suppressed species to reclaim their evolutionary potential. The hegemony's control over galactic civilization began to crumble as enhanced individuals throughout known space rediscovered abilities they had never been allowed to develop. The quantum revolution started by a single human in an abandoned bunker spread across the galaxy at faster-than-light speeds. Marcus watched the probability streams shift and stabilize around new patterns of possibility. Humanity would no longer face the choice between submission and destruction. Every species in the galaxy would have the opportunity to exceed the limitations imposed by their former controllers. The age of artificial constraints was ending, replaced by an era of unlimited potential. The three elite killers departed Earth not as assassins, but as liberators carrying quantum enhancement technology to every corner of galactic civilization. The human they had been sent to eliminate had instead transformed them into instruments of change that would reshape the galaxy forever.